Hi folks, and welcome to Babin's Bees. Today we're going to do our second hive inspection of the spring. So it's really important that in the springtime you get inside your hive when it's the right temperature. So typically you're looking for a temperature of at least 10 degrees or above, or you're seeing your bees flying out of the hive and you know that they're not all clustered nice and tight to keep each other warm, but that they're actually moving around. You don't want to break that cluster. So today in Nova Scotia, or where we are with our bee yard, it's about 14 degrees today. So it's a really nice day, and the bees have been bringing in lots of pollen, which is wonderful. Now pollen, of course we know that to be on blooming buds and on flowers, but pollen is really important for bees. Pollen is a source of food for the bees. It's actually a type of protein for them, and they need that pollen. It's really interesting when you can see a bee that has pollen in it as they visit flower to flower to flower, or bud to flower, or wherever they're going. You'll often notice some pollen on the body of the bee, and then they kind of clean themselves out, and they actually have little teeny tiny pouches on their hind legs, and they store it in there. Once that pouch is full, they fly back to the hive, which is really neat to see. It's very colorful, of course, because pollen typically is a bright orange, or sometimes we've seen green, we've seen a beige color, we've seen red. Pretty interesting. The colors that we're seeing today is pretty much kind of a deep yellow or an orange. Let's take a peek inside the hive. We're going to see what's going on. So again, in the springtime, do they still have food? You want to know, do they have food left over? That's really important. Though they're finding pollen, there's not a lot of nectar yet. So we want to make sure they have enough food. We want to take a peek and see, is the queen laying? So do you see egg? Do you see larva? Do you see capped brood? This is really important to check in the spring. It really kind of gives you an indication how healthy is this hive. So we're going to take a peek at that. If we're lucky, we'll see the queen as well. So let's take a peek inside. So in the top bar hive here for the winter, we kind of section off part of the hive that the bees don't go to, and this is where the bees are. And we know that when we open up this hive, kind of in the first section, what you're going to see and what you're looking for is the food store. So that could be leftover honey that they would have had from the year before, or perhaps maybe you're substituting with something else. So we take a look at this bar, we can see very quickly that kind of towards the center here, there's a little bit of honey left, but they've really kind of eaten the rest. So that's a good sign if they've eaten the honey that was stored there for them. So we're just going to set that aside, and we'll kind of go through and take a peek. Now this one is pretty much empty, so we can actually just move it out. What you want to do is, because even though today is 14 degrees, temperatures fluctuate a lot in the early spring. So you want to move that food really nice and close to where all of your bees are, towards the brood nest, so that they have quick and easy access to that food. So when we notice a bar that's empty, I'm going to just move it to the back, just kind of get it out of the way and bring the food a little bit closer. So we'll take another peek here. We can see here, this here is honey, this is empty. So there's not a lot of resource for them there to eat. You do see some bees that are kind of having a bite there. So we'll leave that one there. That's fine for now. We'll just kind of go through. And as we get a little bit closer to where the bees are, maybe we'll get Gloria to come in and take a look. Right in here, you can start to see that, there's more bees. So the bulk of your bees are going to be right around in this area here, but you can see some of the bees there. And you can see that this is actually honey, and that's what they're eating. And so this one has quite a bit left, so that's good. So that means that their food is pretty close to where they are. So that's a good thing. So I'll just kind of move these along. I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing for food store wise. So I'm not paying a lot of attention. We're going to kind of go into the brood nest, take a look, see, can we find that queen? And is she laying eggs? So that's what we're looking for today. Again, this is more food. So they're on there. They're going after the honey. That's great. That's what we want them to be doing. As we get a bit closer, we can see that this bar itself used to have honey, and might be a little bit difficult to see on the camera, but it's a little bit grainy towards the edge of that cell, and that really is kind of crumbs that they leave. So as they kind of chew through that little layer of wax to get to the honey, it kind of leaves a little bit of a crumb. So that tells me that they've eaten off of this bar. So I'm going to move it towards the back because, again, the food store is pretty much all gone from there. So there's no need to have that so close. However, we have to keep in mind too that the queen is starting to lay, and she really does lay throughout the winter as well, but now it's going to really ramp up. So you do want some empty cells in there so she can put her eggs in. So we're getting a bit closer now, and this is what we call the brood nest. Now, brood is really unhatched bees. That's what it is, and we're getting a bit closer. So as I kind of tap to get the bees a little bit out of the way here, you're going to see kind of a more fuzzy area. It's kind of a yellowish color, kind of fuzzy. That's capped brood. Now, capped brood, the queen would have went in there, she would have laid an egg, turned into a larva, and then they would have capped that over, and that's going to stay there until that bee hatches out. So they'll hatch out from there. So this tells us that the queen has been laying, which is good news for sure. Now, I'm going to take a quick peek and see if we can see any egg in there. I do see some larvae in there, but something else I want to point out, we'll see if Gloria can get this on the camera. Right in there, you're going to see kind of some orangey colors. I don't know if camera will allow to adjust. We'll take a look there and see if we see any. What's inside there is packed pollen. So again, the bees will fly out, and they'll transfer that pollen from their pouches to the other bees, and they store it in there. And again, that's their food, so they need that pollen. So I'm going to put this one back, and we're going to see if we can find the queen. Let's go a little bit closer here. I don't see her here. Not seeing her here. I'm going to turn it over. Now, one thing that I would say, though, is that when we're doing an inspection like this, typically I wouldn't take the bar away from the hive, because if your queen was to fall off of your bar, you wouldn't want to step on your queen. So we're really just doing that so that you can have a better look. The sun's at the right angle to kind of bring it out a little bit closer, and that's why we're doing that. But typically, if you're inspecting your hive, do it over your hive, just in case the queen does fall off. So not seeing the queen there. So we'll go back one more and see if we can find her. And we do see the queen. So the queen is on this bar, and she's right there, right at the edge of my finger. She's a little bit longer. She's moving through right there. The thorax, which is kind of the hump on her back, is not as fuzzy as other bees. She's longer than the other bees. She's right there, longer than the other bees. Her wings are shorter because she doesn't have to fly like the worker bees do. She stays in the hive. And there she is right there. If you can see my finger. That's great. There she is. So busy as a bee, as they say. So she's doing her thing. She's looking at the different cells, inspecting them, looking to see, is this the right place to put an egg? Now, a queen at the height of summer can lay about 20,000 eggs. That's a lot. So, I mean, a hive can really bloom very, very quickly in the summer months. She's just starting to ramp up again. We're going to put her back, and then we're going to take a look to see if we can find some egg. So when we take a look at this bar of wax, there's something really interesting going on here. You'll notice right here, there's a hole, and we'll just bring it up a little bit closer so you can see. Now, we as the beekeepers didn't make that hole. It's really interesting. It's the bees that do. So if you think about a hive, it has rows of comb like this one. So it's sitting inside the hive like this. And then what they do in order to make it easier for them to travel throughout the hive is they'll make some holes in the wax. Tunnels really is what they're doing, right? So in this case, they've made a hole at the bottom, and that makes it easier for the bees to go from comb to comb to comb. Pretty interesting. Something else that's kind of interesting when we take a look at this, this comb is that we're seeing some glistening. So there's liquid in there. So again, honey is made from nectar. So they go gather the nectar from flowers, and then they bring it back. Now, nectar has a fairly high water content. So what they do is they bring it in, they deposit it in a cell, and then they kind of flap their wings around it. And that's really to fan the nectar. It reduces the water content. It comes to the right consistency that they want. And then when it's full, they cap it. And that's your honey. So what we're seeing inside here is that they're storing some honey. So we're gonna see if we can see some of the glistening. I'm just gonna gently tap the bees out of the way, and then we'll bring it closer to the camera. And inside there, you should be able to see, or hopefully you can see, a little bit of glistening. And I'm just gonna move it a bit, just in case it helps for you to see. And that's them storing nectar. Now, bees will store nectar pretty much on all of their bars because it becomes their food, right? So they're kind of storing it where there's easy access. Typically towards the end of the hive is where they'll store the excess, and then they'll put some along the way. Something else that's really interesting too is we spoke about the pollen, and I know we showed you a bar a little bit earlier with some pollen, but we see quite a bit on this one, and I just want to show it to you. So just going to move the bees a little bit here. I just gently blow on them, and they'll scatter out of the way. So let's see if the camera can pick it up in there, and you'll see different colors in there, and that's the pollen. So they've stored some pollen in there, which is pretty neat for their food. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. So we'll put this bar back. So we're gonna take a quick peek at this bar here, because what we're seeing is some cap brood, which is great. And we're seeing some larvae, we're actually seeing some eggs. So it may be a little bit difficult and challenging to see with the camera, but we're gonna give it a try and see if you can see inside there. So all I'm doing right now is just gently bumping the bees, and they'll just scoot out of the way. And then we're gonna take a look in this area here. And what you're looking for an egg is you're looking for a little tiny piece that looks like a grain of rice. Now I'm just gonna bump them out again, just a little bit, get a little bit closer. And then of course the larva is a little bit bigger, and we'll see if it's white, it's whitish in there. So we'll take a peek and see if you can see something in there. All right, so not sure if you're able to see it or not, but we'll have lots of opportunity throughout this summer to be able to show you lots of great things. So what we want to say is thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you like what you're seeing. We're going to be filming probably on a good weekly basis, just different things that we're seeing in our hive. And if you're a brand new beekeeper, especially if you're doing top bar beekeeping, you may want to watch along as we kind of journey along throughout our summer. So again, thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video.